The length of single-player games has long been a topic of discussion for gamers, and there is a fairly wide spectrum of opinions concerning it. The discussion has always been a part of gaming, but perhaps only in the last 10 years or so has it bubbled to the surface in such a way that it is often brought up with almost every major release of a single-player game. While a game's performance on any given console and its overall quality are probably more important factors to most gamers, to a growing number of folks, it just doesn't seem that way. For more and more gamers these days, it seems that the sheer quantity and amount of content is the single biggest deciding factor for whether or not a game is worth its price tag. With this particular variable becoming more and more of a deciding factor for many, it makes sense to discuss it. How big of a deal is game length anyway? As far as this debate tends to go, there seems to be two major schools of thought here. One largely contending that a game's length and wealth of content is the single largest factor to justifying its cost, whereas others tend to look closer at the quality of what is there and not worry too much about how much game there is. Both lines of thought certainly have valid points to make, as the quantity and quality are both obviously important aspects of a single-player game. But as far as this conversation tends to go, the side that is overly focused on runtime seems to be overlooking the point of a single-player game more than the other. The point of a good single-player game is rarely tied directly to how long it takes to complete. Certainly there are some games that thrive on the sheer quantity of content, like many JRPGs though. Final Fantasy games and the plethora of games like them just wouldn't be the same if it weren't for their longer style experiences. That being said, I don't think anybody wants to go back and forth between climbing the same mountainsides and shooting the same bad guys in an Uncharted game for 50 hours. So that again points to there being some sort of reasonable balance between the two concepts that can satisfy as many reasonable people as possible. The side more concerned with quantity also seems to largely be the ones initiating the discussions on comment sections and message boards all over the internet by bemoaning games like The Order 1886 for charging $60 for 7 or 8 hours of entertainment, despite the fact that many of the games that do meet their criteria of being well into double digits of hours are often artificially padded out with superfluous, repetitive tasks, which are also predictably routinely critiqued by the same crowd. Furthermore, if $60 is only acceptable for, say, 20 hours of gameplay, then where does that leave a game like Journey? If you scale that to proportion, Journey would only be worth about $6, which, as anybody who has played through that game will tell you, is completely ridiculous. It's hard to imagine why somebody would pay $60 for a game that advertises itself as a cinematic, well-paced, story-driven adventure and expect to get 40 hours of repetition out of it, but alas, many do. While most reviewers won't bring this particular element up unless the runtime is particularly egregious one way or the other, there is no shortage of gamers willing to make that charge. $60 must equal some sort of minimum runtime, while that amount has never really been fully defined or explained and seems to change depending on the game being discussed. The other line of thought is that, while a $60 game should have some reasonable amount of length to it, judging a game's worth is more about what happens in the game.
Who's talking now, huh?
Is the story interesting? Is there an allure to the setting? Is the gameplay fun? Normally, these questions are asked alongside the concern of length, instead of being dominated by it. Most would agree that length matters. The debate is largely centered around to what degree, and whether or not it really matters for any one particular game. Most who disagree with those who require a certain length to purchase a game are still interested in a lengthy experience. They just don't want it to come at the expense of a game feeling dragged out or elongated beyond its means. Fighting games, racing games, and other more focused, story-driven games like Gone Home or artistic games like Abzu are good examples of this. While you can plow through them on a surface level and technically reach the credits in a short amount of time, or you can deliberately search every nook and cranny and artificially extend your time, neither of those are generally how those games are meant to be played. Most single-player games are just not about the shortness or the length, and thankfully so. If single-player games were more concerned with how long it took to get through them than how much fun the player had playing them, they would be in very real danger of being way too long and no fun. So what's the point of that? A good single-player game doesn't go down in history for its length, but rather, they are remembered most for what the experience was like and what it made the player feel and contemplate. The truth is, sure, single-player games shouldn't feel like they end way before they should. And yes, when gamers spend $60 on a product, they aren't wrong for wanting something that won't be completely exasperated too quickly. But to say the entire make or break of a single-player story-driven game just boils down to the main campaign's runtime is just silly. The pursuit of linking playtime to price point is a dangerous one and could easily lead gamers to miss out on many fulfilling adventures because they don't meet some arbitrary length. Length and sheer quantity certainly plays a bigger role in many types of games, online multiplayer games, puzzle games, and the aforementioned JRPGs. But single-player games generally have other things to worry about. They have story structures, character arcs, and overall pacing to manage. While making sure there is plenty to do in a single-player world will always matter, the cohesion of the story and depth of the experience is generally more important. The product that many, sometimes hundreds of talented artists, writers, actors, and technicians have come together to make by pouring years of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and were somehow still able to sell it to us for $60 to make their money back, should not be judged on length alone. To judge an entire product like that on such a frivolous aspect of it is not only to miss the point of that single-player experience entirely, but by rushing through a game like The Order 1886 in 5.5 hours just to prove a point also robs you as a gamer of the reward of soaking in that game's atmosphere and story, and really experiencing what all those talented folks wanted to share with you in the first place.
External camera 16. External camera 15. Camera 10. Oh, damn it!
They're here.
That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.